Dennis Orb, and the Benders brought the vermilion crowd to their feet, dancing to the rousing Zydeco music. Lacey Boudreaux laughed happily as Michael Brooks spun her in a circle. She knew he was just trying to make her skirt fly up. And her short skirt really flew up, revealing her lightly tanned legs, lightly tanned buttocks, and red silk thong. The orchestra began the second jitterbug, and again Michael twirled the attractive blonde. Once again, her smooth hips, round buttocks, and silk thong were on display. "My husband is sitting right there," Lacey laughed as she danced. "Yeah, so what?" Michael grinned. "We're just dancing." Lacey didn't answer. She just continued dancing to the happy music. A slow song started, and Michael tried to pull her closer. The blonde beauty pushed Michael away and suggested that he go and get drinks for the table. "Carl likes this. What's its name? Gin, Gimlet Gin," Lacey said as she walked towards their table. "Ready, honey?" Carl smiled tightly. "Listen, I've been dancing since we got here. Let me sit for a minute, okay?" Lacey snapped, plopping down on the soft leather bench. "I thought you danced fast with anyone and slow with me," Carl said, barely containing his irritation. He sat and watched as this nasty lawyer danced with his wife. He saw the man's nasty grin, saw how he deliberately circled his wife, exposing her sexy panties for everyone to see. Carl saw that cheeky bastard trying to pull Lacey closer as the slow song started, the song she was supposed to be dancing with her husband. "Next, okay?" Lacey said indifferently, patting Carl on the arm like a child. Butch Everhart and his wife Yvette looked very awkward and looked away from Carl and his wife. Michael's partner, Cheyenne Whitehead, a heavily tattooed older woman, was on the dance floor, pressed close to the young man. From the moment they arrived, Cheyenne abandoned them. Carl noticed that Michael didn't seem particularly upset. "Here we are," said Michael, placing 5 glasses on the table. "Butch, you and Yvette drink that soda, right?" "I'm breastfeeding," Yvette admitted, smiling happily. "Driving," Butch smiled, accepting the soda with a nod. "Cheyenne is drinking this. Has anyone seen Cheyenne?" Michael continued, placing the tequila sunrise on the table next to her empty glass. "And Lacey, you wanted a Long Island iced tea, right?" And Carl drinks." Lacey began. "Oh, right," Michael grinned. "Knew I forgot something." "Don't worry about it," Carl snapped, clearly unhappy. "Charles, that don't be rude." Lacey looked angrily at her husband. "Rude? Oh, no, I certainly don't want to be rude," Carl snapped. Cheyenne returned, leading her dance partner. The blonde woman drowned her drink in one gulp, demanded a third, and led her man onto the dance floor again. Lacey quickly downed her drink, and then followed Michael onto the dance floor as the band began two-stepping. "How is your back healing?" Butch asked Carl politely. "Faster than my lawyer would like, but not as fast as my doctor wants," Carl tried to joke. Butch and Yvette hit the dance floor and soon disappeared into the crowd, stomping, jumping, and twirling. Carl shook his head as he saw Cheyenne and her partner hugging each other as they danced. During dinner at the Mexican restaurant Acapulco Grand, Carl was polite to a loud, vulgar woman and her companion, Lacey's colleague and boss, Michael Brooks, but he did not like either of them. He worked with Butch in the IT department of Thibodeaux's Investments and knew Yvette from the administrative department, and he spent most of the dinner talking quietly with Butch and Yvette. It was Cheyenne's idea to go from the restaurant to the Vermilion nightclub to dance. The hope in Lacey's eyes made Carl agree if she promised that all the slow dancing would be his. She happily agreed, and all 6 of them set off, each pair in their own car. "Listen, we're leaving," Butch said over the music. "We haven't seen our children for more than 3 minutes, and Yvette feels guilty." "Oh, shut up," Yvette laughed happily. "Like you don't miss them." "Miss? About whom?" Butch feigned indifference. "See you on Monday," Carl smiled, accepting a light kiss on the cheek from Yvette. "Has that bastard brought me another drink yet?" Cheyenne asked indignantly, seeing her 2 empty glasses on the table. "Apparently not," Carl replied. Shrugging, Cheyenne dragged her beau towards the bar. She didn't ask Carl if he wanted anything, and Carl didn't expect her to ask. "I've had enough," Carl said, watching his wife flash her panties again as a grinning Michael spun her around again. A slow song began, but instead of going back to the table behind Carl, Lacey snuggled up next to Michael. Michael's satisfied grin directed at Carl was insulting enough, but the look of satisfaction on Lacey's face struck Carl right in the heart. Loud, brash, assertive or not, Cheyenne Whitehead did nothing intentional to hurt Carl. Carl's wife was a completely different matter. Carl grabbed Cheyenne's purse and his wife's purse. Taking Lacey's keys and her cell phone out of her purse, Carl took his cane and limped towards the exit. "Here, keep an eye on this, okay?" Carl said, handing the bags to the big bouncer. Sir, you can't just." The man retorted as Carl made his way to the exit. Inside the club, Lacey and Michael continued to dance. Dennis Orb and the Benders performed his latest hit, Sharing the Moon. The dancers' cheers made Dennis smile. The sight of several skirts flying up also made him smile. Carl went home. The house was a wedding gift from his father-in-law, Chris Fontenot. It was a 2-story monster. Carl and his fiancée enjoyed 2 good years with this giant until a car accident seriously injured Carl's back. He and his wife now lived on the ground floor, although lately she had been spending more and more time upstairs in their former bedroom. She claimed that Carl's snoring was keeping her from sleeping. Entering the house through the garage, Carl made sure the locks on the front and back doors were securely locked before entering their downstairs bedroom. Despite the spasm "we are in the back," Carl quickly and efficiently began to pack his things. He soon realized that he would need another suitcase. The suitcases and his travel bag were upstairs in one of the 3 guest rooms. "You can do it. You're a Marine boy," Carl shouted to himself. "For a deuce, forward." By the time he reached the 2nd floor, Carl was drenched in sweat. He slid down the wall and sat down, trying to catch his breath. The master bedroom was in disarray. Carl's wife never bothered to make the bed. She always had a housekeeper who did it for her. And after their wedding, Carl made the bed himself because his wife didn't do it right. She certainly didn't make the bed the way Sergeant Carl would have expected. After finding the suitcases, Carl first thought of just taking the largest one. Then a thought struck him. What if he needed a 2nd and 3rd suitcase? Will he be able to climb the stairs again? The small suitcase was downstairs because Carl needed it after a drunk crashed into his car. His wife packed him a pair of underpants, pajamas, some t-shirts, and loose sweatpants. "Whatever I don't take, she'll take back upstairs," Carl muttered and threw the suitcases down the stairs. Finding more clothes upstairs, Carl filled his trusty travel bag and tossed those down as well. Seeing nothing else he needed on the 2nd floor, Carl gritted his teeth and began the difficult descent down the stairs. "Oh God!" Carl gasped and moaned as waves of pain washed over him. "Jesus, pick me up in your arms." Carl had almost finished getting ready when there was a loud knock on the door. Carl looked at his watch. He left Vermilion at 20 o'clock. It was now 22:30. It took his wife 2.5 hours to return home. Carl grabbed his laptop, made sure he turned off his desktop computer, and walked through the kitchen into the garage. His last action before closing the door was to place her phone and keys, minus his car key fob, on the kitchen table. He placed the laptop on the passenger seat of the car, locked the door leading from the kitchen to the garage, and started the car. The wife had the idea to jump in front of the car when she saw the garage door rising. The wife also thought to jump to the side when Carl left a strip of tires while leaving the garage. Carl laughed at her stunned face. He also laughed at the fact that she didn't think to enter the code to raise the garage door instead of knocking on the front door and yelling for him to open it. Carl began to lower the garage door, and his wife jumped into the garage before the door was completely closed. Carl laughed. She'll quickly realize that the door to the house is locked, her car is securely locked, and the inside switch for the garage door still hasn't worked since she broke it last week. The wife faces a long night in the garage, perhaps even a long weekend. The housekeeper must come only at 14 o'clock on Monday. The guardian gave Carl a room, and he arranged his back pad and curved headrest on the large hotel bed. The hot jet shower was excellent, and Carl enjoyed the endless hot water for a good 20 minutes before finally turning it off and getting out. Lying in bed, Carl again cursed Brandon Prejean, the drunk who crashed into the back of his 1977 pickup truck. The pickup belonged to Carl's uncle, Brian Boudreau. Brian bought the car new from Hinton Chevrolet and kept it in good condition until glaucoma forced him to put the keys away. Nobody else wanted the old car. The air conditioning no longer worked and the radio was only AM. But Carl loved that old car and promised Uncle Brian that he would take care of it. Maybe they'll get another 45 years of service from this machine. Brandon Prejean was drunk. He was paid that day. He also paid more attention to the 16-year-old high school football player he managed to lure into his car than to the traffic light, which was burning red. He didn't even hit the brakes when he crashed into the back of Carl's pickup. Brandon Prejean walked out of a car accident without a scratch. The young guy in his car suffered a serious head injury and whiplash injury from the airbag, and at first Carl doubted whether he would ever be able to walk again. At 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, Carl got up, made himself a cup of hotel coffee, and called his father-in-law. He told Chris Fontenot what the code was for the garage door and where to find the emergency key for the front door. Wait, why are you telling me this? Chris said sleepily. Carl ended the call, then blocked Chris's number and his wife's number. After thinking about it, Carl also blocked her work number and the number of Chris Fontenot's welding shop. Carl used a VPN to log into the hotel Wi-Fi and paid off their joint credit cards before canceling them. He then withdrew half the money from their joint accounts and opened a new account in his own name. Although he knew the numbers of his wife's personal savings accounts and almost guessed her passwords, Carl did not touch these accounts. Any credit cards in her name would be her problem. He didn't touch them. The house and utilities were in her father's name, so Carl didn't touch that either. He was no longer in the mood for vindictiveness. He just wanted a clean break. There was a studio apartment available on the first floor at Venice Apartments, and Carl signed a 6-month lease for apartment 110. The very cute red-haired girl from apartment 109 gave him a shy smile as he and Keisha walked out of the apartment, and Carl smiled back at her. Bored, Carl decided to drive to Landry's mattress store in Flowers. As their advertising slogan stated, "When it comes to bedding, no one provides a softer fit than Landry's." Two clerks stood in the corner of the store, discussing local politics and the poor performance of the University of Louisiana at DeGard basketball team this season. Carl was asked to look around, and both sellers returned to their discussion. Carl almost decided to go to Algie, to O'Neill's furniture store. He was confident that he would be offered the best service there. So what is next? They'll talk about what a loser Biden is, but at least he's better than damn Trump, said a squeaky voice. Carl looked around, then looked down. Pixie smiled at him, and Carl smiled back. "Are you looking for something in particular, sir?" she asked. "Yeah, I was in a terrible car accident, so I need a pretty firm mattress," Carl replied. "About how terrible? Poor you. Okay, what size? 1.5? Double? Royal?" she asked, looking around the store. Double. This is an apartment. There's hardly room for a king size," Carl answered, looking at the girl appraisingly. Hard. Have you ever thought about a mattress with variable firmness?" the girl asked, leading him to the exhibition model. "Look, there are air pockets, air chambers all over the surface, and you can inflate them to the desired level." Rigidity. Her light brown hair was pulled back into a bun at the back of her head and secured with 2 long lacquered black sticks. Her dress, as Carl noted, was oriental in style and ended just below the knee. On her feet were black high-heeled shoes that matched her black silk dress. The fake gold buckles on the shoes matched the gold oriental appliques on her dress. The girl didn't look Asian. She looked Eastern European. As she walked towards the exhibition model, Carl noticed that she had a cute round butt. When she turned to face Carl, he noticed that she had very beautiful breasts under her silk dress. "I mean, Jesus God, this mess in Afghanistan," said one of the sellers. And Trump, of course, says he could have done much better, agreed the second seller. Exactly, said Carl, and the girl smiled, revealing adorable dimples on her cheeks. So, have you decided? One of the sellers approached. This young lady is doing a great job, thank you, Carl replied. Hey, Michelle, why don't you tidy up the pillow department? The salesman grinned at the tiny woman. I can handle it on my own. I said she's doing great, Carl snapped. No, I can handle it myself, the seller smiled. Thank you. Goodbye, said Carl, heading towards the door. Hey, buddy, the seller said in surprise. Problem? Asked Alton Landry, the store's owner and manager, as he left his office. No, sir, replied the seller. Yes, sir, said Carl, recognizing the store owner from numerous television advertisements. Hello, Carl Boudreaux, dissatisfied customer. And why is this customer unhappy? Alton asked the seller. Because while those two idiots were enjoying the sound of their voices, this young woman was bothering to do her job. As soon as it became clear that I had made a decision, the idiot came here to ruin her sale, Carl said. And when I told him I didn't want his help, she's doing a great job, he ordered her to tidy up the pillow department. Michelle? Alton asked. Yes, sir, Michelle confirmed Carl's words. And honestly, if he treats a colleague like this, I'm afraid to imagine how he will treat a client, Carl concluded. Alton watched as, bloody no, 2 inches actively approached a family of 4 entering the store. He was almost certain that his presence on the sales floor had prompted the other salesmen to act quickly. Alton looked at Carl again. So, what can I do to make you a happy customer? Alton asked. This, right here. This is a good start, Carl agreed. Now, this young lady, you said her name was Michelle? Yes, sir, Michelle O'Connor, the girl replied. Showed me this mattress with variable firmness, Carl continued. See, I was in a car accident and I need something tough for my back. The idiot didn't even bother to find out. She also convinced me to get a double model instead of a single one. You never know when you might have company, right? Jerry, blockhead hash one, walked away muttering to himself. Alton, Michelle, and Carl continued to discuss the benefits of this adjustable mattress model. Brass bed? Yes, sir. We have it in a double size, Michelle cheerfully confirmed, checking the details on her iPad. And, sir, I'll add a base and frame to the purchase, Alton said as he walked over to where another salesman was showing a family a bunk bed. Thank you very much, Michelle said quietly. You won't believe how many times. Alton returned when his parents decided to buy a bunk bed made from black chrome tubular steel. Carl stood up and nodded towards the little woman. Mr. Landry, Carl said. Oh, no, sir. Call me Alton. Alton Landry insisted. Alton, look how this young lady is dressed. Look at her hair and makeup, said Carl. She looks professional. Now look at the 2 men. It's like idiot hash one slept in this shirt. Are you not paying your employees enough to afford a razor? I know he didn't shave this morning. Another guy, his jacket is gray. What color are his pants? Brown. Michelle looked up as Carl began to dictate the address of his wife's house, but then changed it to the address of the apartment. She didn't say anything when Carl tensed his face for a moment. They agreed on a delivery time and Michelle thanked him again. Thank you for giving Landry a second chance, Alton said, shaking Carl's hand. Sir, yes, sir, agreed Carl. At a thrift store in Flowers, Carl bought a tan tweed sofa and a matching chair. He also chose a quality kitchen table. He bought a TV and TV stand at Miller's Electronics Store, as well as a full cable and internet package from PC Nation. Short Moves agreed to deliver the sofa, chair, and kitchen table at the same time as the delivery of the bed from Landry's. While he was at the thrift store, a number appeared on his cell phone that he did not recognize. Since the number was unfamiliar, he sent it to voicemail. Is it true? Is it true? You left me in the garage all night. His wife's voice screamed on voicemail. I could leave you there all weekend, Carl muttered, blocking this new number. Now I regret not doing it. Have you finished your hysteria yet? His wife's text came from another number. This is not hysterical, Carl muttered, also blocking the number. On Monday morning, Billy Stevens, an IT manager, nodded demurely when Carl told him he would be taking time off to attend to personal matters. A problem in the collections department kept Carl and Butch busy until almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Billy told Carl that he had received at least 10 calls from his wife, while Carl and Butch worked to resolve the problem. After lunch, Carl called Nicole Banks, who was handling his claim against Brandon Pregian's insurance company, and asked who she could recommend for the divorce. When do you want her to be notified? Nicole asked. And where? As soon as possible and at her work. As publicly as possible, Carl barked. The furniture was due to arrive on Wednesday. Billy simply nodded when Carl told him on Wednesday morning that he would be leaving work at 2:30. Butch came in a few minutes later and Carl told his co-worker that he would be leaving work early that afternoon. So, try to cope without me, huh? Carl smiled. Please respond. I'm tired of talking to your wife, Billy said as the phone on Carl's desk rang. So are you over your tantrum yet? Asked Carl's wife with irritation. Don't call here again, Carl barked and hung up. Collections are down again. Boudreaux, be in a good mood before you go there, Billy ordered. I'll get to it right now, he said, Butch, grabbing his toolbox. I'm in a good mood. Damn, I'm in a great mood, Carl snapped, grabbing his toolbox and grabbing the equipment they had used to fix the previous problem. I'm serious, Carl. Nina will call me and tell me that you yelled at one of her employees. Billy warned. While Butch and Carl again tried to isolate the source of the latest failure, Lacey sat at her desk in the Sherwill Group building, seething with anger. She ordered pizza last night. Cooking wasn't her favorite pastime, and an employee at Brick's Pizzeria told Lacey that the card was showing as canceled in their database. Lacey had to find another card and was again told by the employee that the joint credit card had also been canceled. That little bastard, Lacey whispered angrily as she dug out her American Express card. An online check showed her husband withdrew half of their savings and half of their checking accounts. Luckily, she was too smart for him to find out about her two secret accounts. And all because I danced with Michael a few times? God, you'd think you'd be man enough. Lacey trailed off as an attractive blonde walked into the room. Hey, I saw the pictures. Kelly Brew? God, she was so beautiful. I still can't believe she died like that, and this Tiffany makes me hate myself, the woman exclaimed. Yes, ma'am, Lacey asked, holding back her irritation. Actually, you're Lacey, right? Lacey Boudreaux, Teresa White asked, still turning her head, looking around. Yes, I'm Lacey, Lacey confirmed. And you have been notified, Teresa said, handing Lacey the envelope. I what? Lacey asked, her mouth hanging open in surprise as Teresa took a digital photo of Lacey holding a large envelope. What do you say to that? Michael grinned as he read the divorce petition over Lacey's shoulder. Me, just because I danced with you a few times? Lacey asked, stuttering. I'm not sure bad taste is a reason for divorce, Diane Pratt, Bonnie Walako's assistant, commented from the doorway of the outer office. Today's post, why is your phone on Do Not Disturb again? Where's Stacy? Michael asked, naming the girl who usually delivered the mail. Oh, crap, Lacey said, realizing that she had left her phone on Do Not Disturb this morning. On a sick leave. Again, Diane replied, in a tone that made it clear to Michael and Lacey that she did not believe that Stacy was on sick leave due to any illness. Don't worry, I'll handle your divorce, Michael Lacey said smugly. No thanks, if he's crazy enough to do this, I want to win, Lacey replied, and Diane burst into laughter as she left the room. A moment later, Lacey put her phone back on Do Not Disturb and went to the break room. Dada Mondi, a shoe designer at Sherwill Group, and her assistant Amy Wynn were arguing over how to share a banana and nut muffin. Each claimed that she could not eat even half a muffin. What do you have there? Amy asked, seeing the stack of papers Lacey was holding in her hand. Okay, I'll take half if you take the other half, Dot sighed, deftly dividing the large muffin into two equal parts. Lacey showed an attractive Asian American girl and a very small designer a divorce petition. Amy and Dot listened as Lacey angrily recounted the events of the previous weekend. "Wasn't your husband in some kind of accident?" Amy interrupted her. "Car," Dot confirmed. "I seriously injured my back. You wanted Mexican food. Why didn't you go to Manny's? Their salsa. And he brought you to Vermilion. I was in Acapulco Grand. There are disgusting chairs," Amy said. "The whole place is disgusting," Dot agreed. "Is this food straight out of the microwave? Disgusting. And they are very proud of this disgusting food." "His back must have hurt like hell," Amy continued. "But he was still ready to go dancing. Wow, I need a Marine like that." "No, he only wanted to dance slow." Lacey hesitated. "Did you hug?" Dot teased. "No, remember? She said she danced a lot with Michael," Dot reminded Amy. Lacey abruptly left the break room, leaving behind her half-full cup of green tea. Amy and Dot continued arguing about the banana nut muffin. Both women would like to be alone. They would eat the whole chocolate muffin, not just half the banana nut muffin. "Dad, lawyers, who is a good lawyer?" Lacey asked when her father answered the phone. "Oh God, Lacey, what? What have you done?" Chris demanded. Carl can't figure it out." "I know, he can't," Lacey sobbed. Chris refused to give Lacey any information until she told him what happened. Lacey tried to give a sanitized version of the evening's events. Chris asked Lacey why she was dancing with a man who was not her husband. He demanded to know why she danced more than one dance with a man she was not married to, especially when, according to her own words, the man was not a good dancer. Lacey couldn't explain, she just sobbed in self-pity. "Damn it, just damn it, Lacey, Jesus, when? When are you going to grow up?" Chris sighed heavily. Penny Jones. She's from Richards, Pellicle, and Jones." Lacey managed to arrange a meeting with Penny Jones the next day. At 3:30, Diane Pratt re-entered Lacey's office and reminded the flighty blonde to put her phone off Do Not Disturb. While his wife sat at her desk feeling sorry for herself, Carl sweated profusely as his physical therapist helped him to his feet. Finally, Tori Webster nodded in satisfaction and Carl fell back to the mat. "You did your exercises," Tori stated, brushing an unruly strand of brown hair away from her warm brown eyes. "Remember, apply ice, take a couple of ibuprofens." Carl wondered if the tiny woman realized that when she brushed her hair out of her eyes, her 36DD breasts involuntarily bulged out. And not for the first time, Carl wondered if those breasts were real or purchased. Tori's choice to wear low-cut tops always showed off her breasts. The stretchy material and low cut naturally drew attention to her chest. Yes, I did," muttered Carl, rising to his feet again. "Don't worry, Mr. Boudreau. We'll soon have you running 5 miles with full gear," Tori promised. Carl laughed. He had no immediate plans to run 5 miles with full gear on his back. As Tori leaned over to check her computer for free time for the next session, Carl took a moment to admire the woman's attractive, round buttocks. The semi-sheer yoga pants revealed to Carl that Tori's top was a thong style. The dark material perfectly separated her cute, firm curves. His wife had a nice little ass too. Her butt was just the right size for her body type, but like most women, his wife thought her butt was too big, and she categorically forbade any play with her butt. For her, it was only a way out. "I bet she would challenge me to try and damage this place," Carl thought as Tori involuntarily shifted from foot to foot, causing her buttocks to tense and flex. "Monday, at 2:30, Tori asked, turning around and giving Carl a great view of her cleavage. "Sounds great. Oh, we need to update your records. I have a new address," said Carl. Guess who managed to break their system again? Billy greeted Carl as Carl walked into the office the next morning, tired and sick. "You and handsome Floyd can handle it," Carl said, even as he reached for his toolbox. Today I'll be the manager and pretend I'm busy." "Fuck off," Billy laughed. Handsome Floyd Ekabuch is sick. His wife managed to infect him with her cold. Women, you can't live with them and you can't shoot them, Carl sighed as Billy grabbed the toolbox too. Yeah, but they're pretty cute, Billy agreed. And they smell good, Carl added as they approached the elevator. Oh, you too. Is this the new aftershave? Billy joked as the doors opened. It's your turn to fuck off, Carl laughed as they entered the cabin. You know, I bet we have ransomware here, Billy said thoughtfully. Butch and I checked, Carl said. What do we need to do? There are 30 stations, Billy asked. 31, don't forget Miss Crowder's computer, Carl agreed as they entered the chaos of the collections department. Okay, Billy said loudly over the complaints and conversations in the Great Hall. Everyone logs out. Everyone, yes, this applies to you too. Turn off your computers completely. Complete shutdown. What are you going to do? Nina demanded an explanation, standing nose to nose with the tall IT manager. Carl and me. We think it could be just one station affecting the entire network here, Billy explained. So we'll go through each station, turn it on, run diagnostics, and then turn it off again. Can't you do this after work? Nina asked sarcastically. We could, but then you'll be disconnected for the whole day, Billy explained calmly. Miss Crowder, we can't keep my entire team busy trying to get you up and running. Believe it or not, there are other departments too, and from time to time, they need our help too. How long will it take? Nina asked capriciously. As long as it takes, Billy said calmly. Actually, we're done, Carl said as he walked out of Nina's office. What? Have you accessed my computer? Nina screamed indignantly, outraged by the violation of her personal space. No, madam, Carl said loudly so that many employees could hear. I logged onto the Thibault Investments computer. These computers, they are not your personal property. They belong to Thibault Investments. Carl nodded towards Nina's office. A still indignant Nina and a grinning Billy followed Carl into the small office. I don't know what adult or dating site gave you this, but you caught a virus, Carl barked, typing quickly on Nina's keyboard. Very old too. It is not surprising that our diagnostics could not detect it. But every time you visit the Thibault Properties website. I didn't come in. Nina tried to lie. You brought down the entire department, and... Carl continued, showing Nina and Billy the computer's browser history. So what if it's not you? Who was that? Nina, any employee who did that would be fired immediately, Billy said seriously. Me, Brooke wants a brother or sister for Christine, Nina sobbed. What about Freddie Loomis? Christine's dad is in a serious relationship, So Butch and I were wasting our time because you refused to give us access to your computer, Carl snapped, nodding as the computer beeped, indicating that the virus had now been removed from the system. Carl turned off the computer. He waited for the count to 10 and turned it on again. Nina was wiping her eyes with a crumpled napkin, and Billy was avoiding eye contact with the collections manager. Carl nodded in satisfaction and left Nina's place. So what do you think will happen to her? Carl asked as they waited for the elevator. Who? Billy asked as the elevator doors opened. Nina, Miss Crowder, Carl asked as the cab began to move upward. I have no idea what you're talking about, Billy said. Inside the IT office, Billy explained his thinking. Nina Crowder just got scared to death. She won't go to illegal sites anymore, at least not on Thibault's computer. And little good will come from reporting the incident to Tom Thibault. Nina is too good a manager to lose if Tom is in a bad mood, so we'll keep it a secret. She knows we know, and that, my furry little friend, is money in the bank in case we need a favor, Billy shrugged. So what did you say about the adult site? What kind of websites did she visit? Carl looked up from his text message. What site? What are you doing? Billy asked. Just sending Butch a text. We found the problem. All the ladies in the collections department were downloading naked photos of him that Yvette showed them. Carl laughed. Dude, Billy laughed. Let him know what he will answer. Thank you very much, Carl Reed Butch's response. Yvette would never share these photos with anyone. I'll call Yvette and see if she has any pictures like that, Billy chuckled. And the site was. Carl said and opened a porn site in a secure template. Pregnant girls who like other girls. Pretty hot, Billy remarked, glancing over Carl's shoulder at some of the images. Yeah, well, most pregnant women are pretty hot anyway, Carl agreed, pausing thoughtfully for a moment before deleting the link. Returning home, Carl smiled at his cute red-haired neighbor. Inside his apartment, Carl prepared for himself gin gimlet and sat down in an overly soft chair. He knew Tori, his physical therapist, wouldn't approve of his choice of furniture, but at the moment, Carl didn't care. They discussed the issue of children. Carl wanted 2 or 3, but at least 2. His wife said that 1 child was enough for her, and that after that Carl would have to have a vasectomy. Good luck with that, Carl snapped. My gun will keep firing until they lock me up. I bet she would look hot, with her belly swollen from our baby, our children, Carl mused, feeling aroused by the thought of his sexy little pregnant wife. Carl poured the drink down the sink and made himself a light dinner. Sitting at the table, Carl felt a feeling of emptiness descend upon him. His wife continued to push back the date of their possible conception further and further. He understood this when he was in the service. He reluctantly accepted this for the first 2 years after his dismissal. His wife wanted to enjoy their time together. Then she wanted to wait until she achieved one goal, then another. Hello? Carl said into the phone. The number seemed familiar to him. Hello, Mr. Boudreau. Hello? Is this Michelle? Michelle O'Connor from Landry's? The voice on the phone squeaked. Hi, Michelle O'Connor from Landry's. What can I do for you? Carl smiled, thinking about the beautiful saleswoman. Mr. Carl, how do you sleep on the new mattress? Michelle asked. The mattress works great. I really appreciate your advice, admitted Carl. And the delivery people. These guys did a fantastic job installing everything. Very professional. Wonderful, Michelle said happily, then became embarrassed. I'd like to invite you to dinner sometime, to thank you, for your help with Jerry and Mr. Alton. Michelle, you are a very special young woman, Carl said. Oh God, don't go, you're a very special young woman, Michelle moaned. God, forget it. But right now, I'm at the very beginning of the divorce process, Carl said. But at that moment, when will the judge's signature be on the dotted line? I want this dinner. How long will that take? Michelle asked, out of breath again. Not fast enough, Carl said. But when will I have the documents in my hands? I will invite you to Hanging Gardens. This is a Thai restaurant right next to my work. I love their peanut and pork curry. I can't wait, Michelle enthused, and Carl decided to add an extra routine to his evening routine. After the accident, any excitement he experienced was weak and short-lived. Tori assured Carl that he would be able to regain full function. This requires time and patience. Carl assured Tori that he has no patience, but unfortunately, he has a lot of time. Carl was drenched in sweat when he finished his exercises that evening. The shower in his apartment did not produce enough hot water, and the flow was weak. Carl decided that as soon as his divorce was over, he would find a house, install a hot water heater that would actually produce hot water, and get a shower head that could cut flesh. He sat on a small chair in the cramped shower, letting the water pour over him, and thought about Michelle, about his nameless neighbor, about his wife joining him in this imaginary shower in some house in the future. Your wife hired Penny Jones, Nicole Banks told Carl the next day. Okay, I guess. Thank God I have the best lawyer, Carl said. They're asking for advice, Nicole said. Consultation is good. The clock still keeps ticking, right? Asked Carl. The clock keeps ticking. They started ticking the moment we filed, Nicole agreed. The clock will tick until you tell me to stop it. Billy made fun of Carl when he informed him about the latest events in his personal life. Carl chuckled, knowing Billy didn't mean any empty threats or complaints. Let me understand. Vacation for a massage, Billy said, listing the disorders on his fingers. Dude, physical therapy? These are not massages, Carl objected. Leave to deliver the bed. Billy continued. Well, yes, you caught me on this, Carl agreed. Leave to meet with a lawyer. A vacation to scratch your ass, Billy continued. Well, that's a pretty big itch, Carl agreed. Not to mention a pretty big one. Billy began. Hey, what's the size of a man's ass? It's personal, Carl said. Mrs. Cahill is out of work again. Damn, where's Butch when you need him? Billy smiled. About. Oh, ask Yvette if she has any pictures of Butch, will you? Dude, do you really want to see pictures of Butch? Carl asked, standing up. No, but can you imagine the look on his face when he thinks we have them? Billy chuckled. So when is the consultation? Miss Banks said she would let me know, Carl said as he opened the door. Sylvia Hooperstein was borderline incompetent with banal advice and empty instructions. Carl hated this domineering woman at first sight and really hated her furniture. He noticed that his wife offered no help when he explained to the irritated woman why her too soft, too low furniture was unacceptable for a 50-minute session. Madam, I was in a car accident. A drunk man crashed into me from behind, Carl explained through clenched teeth. I understand the psychology of using soft, comfortable furniture, but this is unacceptable to me. Marnie Vogel, Sylvia's secretary, brought a chair from the small break room. Carl mumbled his thanks, and the attractive older woman nodded. Now that everyone is settled, Sylvia said sharply. His wife recounted her version of the evening that led to Carl's unwise departure from home. Carl resisted, rolling his eyes at her sob story about the heartbreak and suffering she endured upon discovering that her husband, her rock, had left their happy, loving home. Carl told his version of the events of the evening. He didn't make a scene, as his wife claimed, when they suggested dancing. He did not sit and sulk, as his wife claimed. I just asked a few slow dances with my wife. Look at her. She's a beautiful woman, a sexy woman, and it's nice to hold a beautiful, sexy woman while slow music plays that gives you a reason to snuggle up, Carl said. Both Sylvia and his wife nodded in agreement. Sylvia even smiled slightly. Now ask her how many slow dances we danced together, Carl said firmly. I don't remember, so what? 1 or 2, muttered his wife, blushing. No one. Now ask her how many slow dances her boss has had, Carl said, raising his cane. Our time is up. Have your secretary call me for the next meeting. But I haven't given you the assignment for the next session yet, Sylvia said stammeringly. Send it to me via text message. I'll ignore it to my heart's content. I have a job to return to. It took up my lunch hour, Carl said as he left the office. If you don't even want to work on our marriage, then what's the point? His wife screamed into Carl's phone later that day. My thoughts exactly, Carl said. But, you should call my lawyer. You shouldn't call me. Oh, never mind, his wife snapped. Carl wondered if his wife, or Sylvia, noticed that she made no attempt to move from her seat closer to the chair Marnie had set up for him. Carl also wondered if either woman noticed that when he explained his physical limitations to the therapist, his wife did not utter a word of support. At the next session, the hard chair was already in place. Carl nodded his thanks and sat down. His wife again chose a low, soft chair at the opposite end of the room. Carl turned his chair so that he could more easily watch his wife as she again described him as unreasonable and demanding. Andy Hernandez, Carl said when Sylvia gave him the floor to answer. What? Asked his wife. Excuse me, how is it? Sylvia began. Chad Terrio, Tommy Hewall, Tommy Dawson, Carl continued. I don't understand, his wife said, looking at the dot above Sylvia's head. What do these names mean? Asked Sylvia. Those are the names of some of the guys she slept with while we were engaged, Carl said, not taking his eyes off his wife. Oh, as if you were so innocent, his wife cried. Name one. Name one girl I've slept with since I put the ring on your finger, Carl urged. We won't get anywhere if, Sylvia began. Robert Richardson, This incident almost led to his divorce, Carl continued. Did you know he was married? With 2 twin girls? Did you even care about his wife and daughters? What about you, huh? His wife defended herself. Completely, 100% faithful from the moment you agreed to become my wife, Carl said. Oh, I'm just sure, his wife snorted. If I have been unfaithful, prove it, Carl challenged. Now I know you left your panties in place after I got home from the building. Well, do you see, said his wife. But since this accident, it seemed like it was only a matter of time. Flirting, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Views, dancing, said Carl, raising his cane. See you next week. Wait, next week I want. Sylvia began, but Carl was already leaving the room. At the 8th and final scheduled counseling session, Sylvia stated that they had made some progress, and she was confident that a few more sessions would allow them to reconcile. Carl's hard gaze slowly erased the smile from the woman's face. She finally looked away and looked at his wife, who sat looking at her husband. You're done, aren't you? Whispered his wife, holding back a sob. Chad Theriault called me the other day, Carl said, his voice low and firm. What is he? His wife gasped. Dr. Hooperstein, I won't tolerate another minute of your tired cliches and your fortune cookie advice, Carl said. He stood up and was able to perform this movement without relying on a cane. He used a cane to maintain his balance as he walked towards the door. Advice, Carl said at her office door. Instead of talking nonstop, maybe you should start listening. From the very beginning of these long, boring, useless sessions until now, you never asked me what I hoped to get out of these sessions. To find a way back to loving my wife, Sylvia stammered. I never stopped loving her, Carl said as he opened the door. But damn it, I sure as hell don't love her. She is immature, irresponsible, selfish, narcissistic. She just needs to grow up. Well, we can't all be as perfect as you, his wife yelled at him. If she is like that, then why did you marry her? Asked Sylvia. The little head thought for me, Carl admitted with a forced smile. But when did the accident put my little soldier out of action? I never said I was perfect, Carl told his wife. But at least I'm trying. At least I'm making an effort. Can you say the same? Lacey took a few minutes to collect her thoughts. She was still wiping her eyes when Marnie, Sylvia's secretary, reminded Lacey that she needed to pay her deductible, the part her insurance didn't cover. Safely ensconced in her car, Lacey called Chad Theriault. He responded with his ridiculous hello, and Lacey yelled at him for calling Carl and telling him about them having sex the other day. I what? Stop yelling, you idiot. I didn't call your... Hell, I don't even know his damn number. What would I call him? Chad objected. Oh, that bastard, Lacey cursed, realizing that her husband had outplayed her again. And Dad started talking about the house, utilities, lawn care, and maid services. Since her husband was no longer paying the bills, Lacey had to rely on her father's help to pay these expenses. Lacey didn't want to go home. She was an adult, for God's sake. But without her dad's help, she couldn't afford a big house. How about you sell this one and buy me a smaller one? Lacey suggested. How about you get a job and buy your own house? Chris objected. Now make sure everything is clean. Mrs. Davis will come in tomorrow to look at it and see what we can hope to get for it. Well, will I get at least some money for it? Lacey asked with offense. There remains a debt of $112,000. After paying it off, Carl will receive half. Chris informed Lacey. Carl will get. Why will he get half? Lacey was indignant. Oh my God, Lacey, seriously. Your lawyer didn't explain anything to you, Chris sighed. Well, how about this? We will sell it for any amount, but we will say that we only received. Lacey suggested. And maybe we'll get adjoining cells in the jail, Lacey. It's illegal, honey, Chris sighed. Looks like I really got my money's worth by sending you to Cabrini. While his wife dealt with Carmen Davis and the stream of people passing through their home, Carl mentally counted down the days until his divorce. Nicole contacted Carl about her upcoming court date. Billy, of course, made it difficult for Carl to ask for this extra time. Butch also joined in the friendly banter. Thank God we didn't have children, Carl seriously agreed with his boss and colleague. Mrs. Cahill's broken again, Butch shouted, reaching for his bag of tools. No, no, no. Every time you go there, you're gone for hours, Billy countered. Carl can handle it. Oh, Butch sighed. Oh, Jesus, what is he, Billy? He's sulking, Carl teased. Look at him. You could park a truck on that bottom lip. Oh no, I'm not going to tolerate a grown man blowing in my department, Billy said. Go, go, if it's so important to you. Butch ran out of the office cheerfully. Billy and Carl exchanged smiles and shook their heads. Hey, how's your back? I mean, have you cut down to one massage a week? Billy asked. My friend, physical therapy is not a massage, Carl smiled. But my mobility, it gets a lot better. My range of motion, much, much better. I won't say I'm 100%, but man, I feel much better than when this all started, that's for sure. And best of all, I can get horny again, Carl thought, but didn't say it out loud. Nobody provides a soft landing like Landry's, Michelle O'Connor responded by phone. I'm going to court on Wednesday, and I hope you'll be free Wednesday night, Carl said. Is this a personal call? That sounds like a personal call, Billy teased. Is this Carl Boudreaux? Michelle chirped. It's Carl, then yes, I'm free on Wednesday night. Great, Carl said, smiling at her enthusiasm. Shall I pick you up from Landry's? I have to charge you for this call, Billy said. What? I'm on my mobile. What will you take from me? Carl asked, covering the phone with his hand. Yes, I'll take a change of clothes with me, Michelle agreed. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, I'll be out of the office Wednesday afternoon, Carl said, ending his conversation with Michelle. Oh, Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? Damn, didn't I tell you? Don't tell me I forgot to tell you, but we have dismantling on Wednesday. We'll take all day. We probably won't get out of here until midnight, Billy said. Bullshit. Then Carl laughed and raised his head when Butch returned. What did Mrs. Cahill do this time? There's no paper in the printer, so naturally it sends out 1,000 print requests and then loads it up with paper. Butch shook his head. Then she panics because now the printer is printing all her requests. Is it true? The printer is not working. Get up, come over and check the printer. But no, she thinks that if the first request didn't work, then the next one will definitely work, right? What about Yvette? Billy asked. Oh, hey, Butch, remember we have a full teardown on Wednesday, right? Yeah, Yvette is not happy about it either, Butch agreed. He says, God help me if I wake the twins when I get back. But guess what? Mr. Boudreaux thinks he can just run away and go to court, Billy said. About. No, not on Wednesday, Butch said. Everything is in place. It's right here on your calendar. This is wrong, Butch, I'm going to hit you, Carl laughed as Tear Down Wednesday suddenly appeared on the calendar on his computer. Okay, we'll do it on Thursday, Billy laughed as Butch smiled a satisfied smile. Yeah, next Thursday, Carl agreed. In courtroom B, his wife wore an arrogant expression and feigned disinterest in what was happening. Carl smiled a tight smile as his former father-in-law approached and offered his hand. Son, I hope she pulls her head out of her ass sooner or later, Chris sighed. I hope the same, Mr. Fontenot, Carl agreed, shaking Chris's hand. But until she grows up, Chris shrugged, then turned and walked away. His ex-wife turned and looked at her father as he walked out of the courtroom. Then she turned and stared at Carl, her hot white eyes flashing. After thinking, his ex-wife turned and stared at a spot above Judge Marie Robichaud's head. It was a rather dry and dispassionate proceeding, until Nicole Banks put bank statements from his ex-wife's 2 secret accounts on the table. You bastard, this is my money, his ex-wife shouted at Carl. Both accounts were opened after marriage. All money was deposited after marriage. It's public property, Nicole said calmly. Penny Jones turned and glared at her client. Carl knew that one of the questions Nicole asked him was about any secret bank accounts or safe deposit boxes. Carl suggested that his ex-wife's lawyer probably asked his ex-wife the same questions. But this is my money, they are mine, Carl's ex-wife screamed when she was ordered to give half of the money to Carl. Penny asked that Carl Boudreaux pay all legal costs, including attorney's fees. After all, he was the one who filed the application. Judge Robichaud smiled a tight smile and shook her head. Normally, Miss Jones, I would agree with you on this point, Judge Robichaud said. But given that your client was not entirely honest about her income and savings, each party shall pay the costs of this proceeding equally, and each party shall pay its own attorney's fees. Free at last, thank God Almighty I'm free, Carl said as they left the court. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that, Nicole said, shaking her head. You wouldn't have to charge me so much, Carl suggested, and Nicole flashed a quick little smile. Michelle wore a light blue shirt with white stripes. Her navy blue pleated skirt reached to her knees, and on her feet she wore sparkly Mary Janes with thick platforms. The light blue and white ribbons holding her thick, long brown hair completed the innocent schoolgirl look, and Carl felt himself getting aroused. You look perfect, Carl said as he got out of his car. He was rewarded with a dimpled smile as she bounded up to the passenger door of his sedan. He was also rewarded with a quick glance at her bare thighs as she got into his car. They were quickly seated. Carl thought ahead and made a reservation. Michelle flashed a significant portion of her thigh again as Carl pulled out a chair for her. He then pulled his plate, cutlery, and glass to the chair to Michelle's right instead of sitting opposite her. I don't understand why they do this, make you scream across the table to be heard, Carl said. I know, Michelle agreed, smiling at him. They ordered dinner. Carl chose the peanut chicken and Michelle the vegetarian fried rice dish. While they were waiting for food and during dinner, Carl learned that Michelle's mother committed suicide 3 years after her birth. Michelle was raised by her mother's lovers, and although Megan, Bonnie's lover, and Michael O'Connor, Michelle's father, did not get along, they tried to raise Michelle in a loving atmosphere. And then, 3 years ago, I found out that my dad wasn't really my dad, Michelle said. I like this. So do you know who your real father is? Asked Carl. Yes, but he is not involved in my life, Michelle answered calmly. My dad is my dad, period. A slight noise drew their attention to the door. Carl pursed his lips as his ex-wife and Chad Theriault entered the restaurant's main dining room. His ex-wife chuckled, and Chad Theriault, a minor celebrity for his racing, smiled, showed off, and nodded to the diners as the hostess led them to a table. This is Chad Theriault, Michelle whispered loudly to Carl. She giggled as she looked at the arrogant man. Her eyes quickly scanned the rider's companion without pausing. Michelle then looked up at her companion's emotionless face. When did Robin Durst beat him? I laughed and laughed. I almost bought a pair of these tiger sunglasses just because of this, Michelle giggled. They showed it over and over again on Channel 12. She beat him pretty good. Yeah, they make them for men too, Carl agreed. But damn it, they're so proud of those glasses, aren't they? Dessert? The waitress asked them and listed the available desserts. Michelle, this lava cake is a great choice, Carl said. Okay, Michelle agreed happily. But you have to help me eat it, okay? Well, you'll have to help me with my pecan pie, Carl smiled. Coffee? Only when the waitress placed cups of strong coffee on their table did Carl and Michelle hear a woman scream. You worthless bastard. Association meeting, you say? April, Chad shouted as his wife lunged at him. And you family-destroying bitch, April shouted at her ex-Carl's wife. His ex-wife tried to get up, backed away, and tried to run away from the fierce-looking knife in April's hands. Trying to do all three at once, she was getting nowhere and April stabbed with the bloody knife. Carl's body knocked April almost across the table. The slippery knife flew out of her hand, and she crawled across the table to grab it. Another customer knocked April down and sat on her, preventing her from grabbing a large knife. Carl grabbed a linen napkin from the table and folded it. He pressed the napkin to the wound on his ex-wife's throat. Her beautiful blue eyes looked into his. Carl forced himself to smile. "Everything will be fine." "You'll be fine," he assured the frightened woman. 4 police officers and a medical team arrived at the same time. There was nothing they could do for Chad. April's knife pierced his heart. "You'll be fine. They are here. They will take care of you," Carl assured the still frightened woman. "Are you? Will you come with me?" she tried to ask, trying to grab his hand as she was loaded onto the stretcher. Wiping his hands, he called his ex-father-in-law and told him what happened as best he could. "But she'll be okay?" Chris begged. Sir, I don't know," Carl admitted, "but they're taking her to the trauma center." "You really know how to entertain a girl," Michelle said as Carl returned to his seat. Carl laughed loudly and called the waitress to pay. The woman tried to smile, but couldn't. "You don't have to pay," she said, pointing to the restaurant manager. Carl nodded in gratitude and helped Michelle up. He left a $20 tip for the waitress. The manager may pay for their dinner, but he will not tip the waitress. "Now you have to come up with some bullshit to get me to come back to your house," Michelle said as Carl started the car. Oh, thanks. I haven't been on a date for a long time," Carl smiled. "I wasn't sure exactly when to do it." "Well, I'm waiting," Michelle said as Carl drove toward the Venice apartments. Oh, okay. Hey, Michelle, didn't you see what a good job the delivery guy did setting everything up?" Carl said. "Do you want to see my apartment?" "Mr. Boudreau, seriously? On the first date?" "I will. What kind of girl do you take me for?" Michelle exclaimed. "The one I'd like to sit on the couch with and kiss," Carl said after his surprise wore off. Well, that sounds fun. I think I'd like to sit on your couch and kiss," Michelle agreed. "Do you have coffee?" Michelle asked as Carl opened the door to his apartment. "Yeah, would you like a cup?" Carl asked and nodded to his red-haired neighbor, who looked out at them from her door. "No," Michelle said, walking into the apartment in front of Carl. "But in the morning." "Condoms?" asked Carl. "I'm on the pill," Michelle replied. "Come on, give me everything." Michelle crawled up to him, kissed his lips, and then laid her small head on his chest. "Please state your name for the record," asked David Hightower, Assistant District Attorney and Chief Prosecutor in St. Anne Parish. "Lacey Faye Boudreau," Lacey whispered. "Excuse me, could you speak a little louder?" asked David. "I cannot. My vocal cords were damaged when April Thuriot injured me," Lacey whispered. "I object, Your Honor." "Allegedly," countered Eric Green, April Thuriot's lawyer. "Accepted." Judge Linda Neuenberg agreed in a tired voice. "So you can't speak louder because someone cut your vocal cords?" David asked, looking at the jury. "I protest," Eric objected again. "Just establishing why she cannot speak above a whisper, Your Honor. I didn't say who might or might not have done the cutting," David grinned. "Mr. Hightower," Judge Linda Neuenberg admonished. Despite many objections interrupting her testimony, Lacey recounted the events of that evening. Eric questioned the witness, but Lacey did not deviate from the truth, so Eric was unable to sway her testimony. "There are no further questions, Your Honor," Eric said. Lacey was escorted out of the courtroom by a Bender Department police officer. Her orange jumpsuit made her pale skin and blonde hair look even paler. As Lacey walked past her ex-husband, she looked at him and whispered, "I love you." "It's too late," Carl muttered as his ex-wife left the courtroom. "The prosecution calls Mr. Carl Boudreau to testify," David called. Carl slowly walked up to the podium, stood up straight, and took the oath. Then he sat down on a hard chair. During cross-examination, Eric raised questions about the relationship between Carl and Lacey. He suggested that Carl might be a little biased in his testimony against April Thuriot. "Sir, I have never expressed my opinion," Carl replied slowly. "I didn't use any adverbs or adjectives. I have stated the facts as they are." "But you don't feel any joy that your wife was shot while she was on a date with another man?" Eric suggested. I feel neither joy nor sadness that Lacey Boudreaux, was injured, Carl said. There are no more questions, Your Honor, Eric said, seeing that Carl Boudreaux could not be enraged during interrogation. After being released, Carl saw that it was already 4 o'clock. Seeing no reason to go to work, Carl drove to a modest brick house on Wilford Road. Once inside, he took off his jacket and loosened his tie. Then he made himself a whiskey and soda. Is there something for me too? Marnie Vogel asked, walking into the kitchen just as Carl was about to take a sip. Well, of course, I did this for you. Carl smiled and kissed the 48-year-old woman. No, I don't have to, Marnie said, gently pushing him away. But tell me, how did it go? It went fine, I think, Carl shrugged. They called Lacey first, then they called me, and... Lacey, you saw your ex-wife Lacey, right? Marnie asked, her jealousy quickly flaring up and overflowing. Yeah, let me tell you, orange is not her color, Carl said, slapping her lightly on the back. Careful, darling, your jealousy is showing. Dinner consisted mainly of canned food in jars. Marnie wasn't a particularly good cook. Carl cleaned everything up quickly but efficiently. He felt Marnie's need. Following her instinct, Marnie peeled off her work clothes. Carl took a shower. While she went to the bathroom to wash up, Carl put on his boxers and left the bedroom. In the living room, with his second whiskey and soda in hand, Carl sat and thought. The loud sound of the TV from the bedroom did not penetrate his consciousness as he brooded. Michelle O'Connor was a fun distraction. She was cheerful, lively, affectionate, and exhausting. It took an unusual amount of energy for Carl to keep up with this cute little fairy. Carl really believes that he falls in love with Michelle when she suddenly announces that she has met the love of her life. And so, their romance suddenly ended. The cute red-haired neighbor moved out, and in her place, a 300-pound, masculine, 60-year-old woman moved into apartment No. 109. At his lowest point, Carl received a call from Marnie Vogel, a secretary in Sylvia Hooperstein's office, asking if he would accompany her to an event at the Lopez Center for Dr. Sylvia Hooperstein. Cheater of the year, Carl thought, but said that he would be glad and honored to accompany Marnie to this event. Immediately after the evening's festivities, Marnie squeezed into the back seat of Carl's sedan, lifted her long evening dress up to her belly button, and demanded that Carl fuck her. The sex is good. I mean, it's great most of the time, Carl thought as he twirled the glass in his hand. But damn, just damn. So when is her trial? Marnie asked at breakfast the next morning. Her trial? He's coming now, said Carl, eating his wheat porridge. Remember? I gave testimony. Not about that. Your ex-wife, Marnie said, spooning yogurt into her mouth. Oh, Lacey, on the 5th, first Tuesday, Carl said. Oh, Marnie said, looking away. Yes, the sex is good, but... Carl thought as they both left the house. There were no hugs, no kisses, no kind words. Marnie got into her 25-year-old Toyota Camry, and Carl got into his Chevy. After waving his hand and nodding his head in response, they parted. At the St. Anne court, David Hightower told Carl that his participation in the trial was over. If he needs them, they will contact him and set up a time. But for now, Carl is free. See, that's why you didn't sell your things, Carl thought, and went to the Tab Properties leasing office. 40 minutes later, he had a new apartment. 43 minutes later, he arranged with short moves to move his furniture from the warehouse to his new apartment. You come and go as you please, huh, Butch? Billy said as Carl walked into the IT office. Oh shit, hey, time for my coffee break. See you, Carl said, pretending to look at his watch. Beast, no, go down to the purchasing department, Billy laughed. They just reported that their print requests weren't going through. Paper? Toner, who bets on what? Carl agreed, grabbing his tool bag and making sure it contained toner cartridges in sealed bags. I'll bet 50 on the toner. Hopefully, they're smart enough to check the paper, Butch said. Toner, Definitely a toner, Billy agreed as Carl left the office. You both lost, Carl laughed after 20 minutes. Paper, and of course, since they sent 100 requests to print one document. You're making this up, Billy laughed. But since you missed your coffee break. Too bad, Butch interjected. Anticipating her reaction, Carl waited until Friday evening to tell Marnie that he was leaving. This was not cowardice, but a matter of convenience. Carl was pretty sure that the attractive older woman would scream, yell, and maybe even throw things. And when she exhausts her rage, she will demand that he leave her house immediately. Instead, she let out a long sigh and said, "Well, I was wondering how long it would take. You men are all the same." I, Carl began, but fell silent. So, what's her name? I know her, Marnie asked bitterly, turning away. Who am I? Asked Carl. Her. The bitch you're leaving me for, Marnie screamed, finally showing some emotion. Marnie, no. There's no one, Carl said. Oh, bullshit. Are you going to tell me that you're leaving me and you don't have some bitch on your side? Marnie demanded. No amount of protest could convince Marnie that Carl had no other woman. Marnie finally turned over and cried bitter tears. Carl lay listening to her harsh sobs. As usual, Carl made the bed in the morning. His last act before leaving the bedroom was to take off his plain white t-shirt and place it on the pillow on his side of the bed. All his clothes were already packed in the trunk and back seat of the car. Bye, Marnie spat as Carl put the coffee cup and bowl and spoon in the dishwasher. Bye, agreed Carl. Carl waited to see if she would say anything else. She just stood there, jerked the dishwasher door open, and furiously shoved her dirty spoon into the cutlery tray. Bye, Carl said again. Keys to. Bye, okay? Goodbye, Marnie shouted as she walked out of the kitchen. Bye, said Carl, closing the door. Carl did not have to testify at Lacey's trial. Penny Jones, her lawyer, accepted the plea agreement for her client. Instead of a second-degree murder charge in the death of Michael Brooks, Sarah Giori, the St. Elizabeth Parish District Attorney, and Penny Jones agreed to a manslaughter charge. Judge Marie Robichaud sentenced Lacey Faye Boudreau to serve her sentence at the medium-security Hearst Prison in Easton Turn, Louisiana. Lying in her hospital bed after April's attack, Lacey did the math in her head. Only one person knew she would be at the Hanging Gardens restaurant that evening. Only one person knew she would be at the Hanging Gardens Thai restaurant with Chad Theriault. So divorce? Hey, let me take you to Side by Side for a little celebration tonight, Michael Brooks said proudly as Lacey prepared to leave the office and go to court. Oh, that's nice, but I already have a meeting. Chad is taking me to Hanging Gardens tonight, Lacey replied. At that time, Lacey actually grinned when she saw her boss's red face. She knew that he was in love with her. She also knew that Michael Brooks was neither as smart as he thought he was, nor as attractive and irresistible as he thought he was. Damn rat, Lacey whispered, looking at the acoustic tiles in her hospital room. You damn rat. 2 weeks later, after the near-fatal incident, Lacey returned to work with a white strip of adhesive tape holding gauze over the stitches in her throat. She received a hug from Amy Wynn, who had been filling in for her while she was away. Damn girl, how do you put up with his crap? Amy asked, grabbing my personal Cartier pen from the tabletop and preparing to leave the outer office. Not easy, Lacey whispered, her voice still hoarse. As Amy left the outer office, Lacey took the key to Michael's office from the middle drawer of her desk. As quietly as possible, she opened the door to his office. She then took a knife from her Barragana bag, a knife similar to the one April Theriault used against her. Lacey opened the door to Michael's office and found him enjoying himself, looking at a video of male and female sex. I almost died, Lacey tried to scream, but she could only whisper, Let's see how you like it, you fucking bastard. Amy forgot her coffee mug. It said, Oxygen Thief, in large white letters on a black background. She screamed as she saw Lacey with a knife in her hand and Michael thrashing in agony as his life drained out of him. Chris Fontenot cried inconsolably as his baby, his only daughter, prepared to leave the courtroom. Father and daughter hugged for several long moments, crying together. Finally, one of the assistants pushed them away from each other. Lacey staggered slightly when she saw her ex-husband standing behind her father. He gave her a sad smile, and she bravely tried to smile back. "I should have danced with you," Lacey whispered. "I should have danced with you." Her ex-husband wiped his wet eyes and shrugged. Lacey allowed herself to be led out of the courtroom by two deputies. She didn't turn around as the deputy on her left opened the side door of the courtroom and pushed her through the open door. Carl solemnly shook hands with his former father-in-law, hugged him, and then left the courtroom when the next case was called. He hoped that Chris Fonenot would survive this emotional stress, but the man looked rather ill as they sat together on the hard wooden bench. Now, after his daughter's verdict, the man looked terrible. Arriving at Thibodeau's Investments, Carl entered the elevator. He pressed the button for his floor and sighed heavily. "Hold the elevator. Please hold the elevator," Carl heard someone shout. His hand shot out and prevented the doors from closing. He smiled as he saw his lawyer, Nicole Banks, rush towards him. Another woman followed her. "Miss Banks, calm down. I'm holding the door," Carl said. It's you," Nicole joked, slowing down. "Doesn't matter. We'll wait for the next one." "As you wish," Carl laughed. "Come on, come in." Then the laughter froze in Carl's throat. He smiled widely when he saw his former neighbor, the cute red-haired girl who lived in apartment No. 109, enter the elevator with Nicole. "Hey, neighbor," Carl said as Nicole pressed the button for the 6th floor. "Oh, hello," replied Jenna West shyly. "Are you too familiar?" Nicole asked Jenna. "Yes and no. She lived in the apartment next to mine," Carl said. "But I don't think we ever said more than 2 words to each other." He extended his hand. Jenna took his hand and her blush deepened. "Hello, Carl Boudreau," Carl said. "I work in it in Thibodeau's." I'm Jenna West. I'm Miss Banks' paralegal," Jenna whispered. "Okay, I know her extension number is 401, Carl told Jenna. "But what if I don't want to talk to her? How can I contact you?" "You cannot. Not my time," Nicole said, half jokingly. "Oh, okay. How about your mobile number? Can I get your mobile number?" asked Carl. "What does she do in her private time?" Nicole agreed. Carl quickly added Jenna's number to his phone, then exited the elevator on his floor. He wished Nicole and Jenna a good day and walked away. "How did everything go? Are you almost done with all this drama?" Billy asked as Carl entered the room. "I'm not sure," Carl said, thinking about the cute red-haired paralegal. "I think I'm about to start more drama." "Save us," Butch said. "The collections department just sent a request." "Oh, send me," Carl begged. "Please, I need someone too." "Cheerfully, sit down. Butch, get on with it," Billy ordered. Carl broke into a smile as the door closed behind Butch. Billy raised his head and started laughing. "Bastard, you just tricked me, didn't you?" Billy grinned. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.